Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unity Consciousness event, where we are empowering the collective awakening with heart-led intention and information to harmonize mind, body, and soul. I am your host, Kristen Bilecki, and today I am excited to be here with the radiant Dr. Melissa Sophia Joy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm so delighted to be here.
Yes. So let's begin with our heart resonant meditation. I invite you, if you're in a safe place, to close your eyes and take a deep breath into your body. Taking a deep breath to presence yourself here in this moment. Feeling your body, your breath in your body. Allowing all of your attention to be here, now, in this moment. Heart, calling in your pure heart frequency. The space in which we receive our pure wisdom and knowing. Calling in all of yourself here, your consciousness, your higher consciousness, to unify here in this space, to be present with us in this conversation, to receive what you're here to receive. And connecting here with me and Melissa through the heart space, within the unified field that we're creating in this moment. Resonating our intentions. Melissa, please speak to an intention that you have for our viewers at this time.
My intention is that through these words that we share today and the energy and the transmission that's held within them, that we all can more easily connect to our higher self and the incredible power of stabilizing our life and healing our life and awakening our heart and the divine love that has the ability to heal each one of us and humanity.
Thank you. Yes. And I'll speak to the intention that I've been holding for this event, which is to create a unified heart resonant field to support you in optimal reception of the information we are offering to uplift, expand, and anchor in the wisdom and feeling of unity, and to create a foundational shift in 30% or more of you to awaken, empower your own abilities with heart-led consciousness to deepen and inspire your own soul expression and live your own soul vision. Just taking a breath into that, and viewers, if you wish to, please create an intention for yourself in this moment, what you'd like to shift into within your higher conscious self and unity consciousness. And thank you all for being here. It's such a pleasure. And I'll introduce Melissa to you all now in this moment. Melissa Sophia Joy is a naturopathic doctor, founder of Somatic Awakening, and specialist in mind, body, spirit counseling. She is also a spiritual teacher, ordained oracle, priestess in the Magdalene Sophia tradition, mystic, energy medicine practitioner, and medical intuitive. She has been in practice as a naturopathic doctor for 20 years. But most significantly, she is a carrier of an ancient wisdom tradition of opening to our own unique connection to the divine and tapping into the potent energy of healing that resides there. She discovered this path inside of her by walking through her own profound healing and awakening over decades. She sees this light of the divine within us all, and she helps her patients and students heal and evolve as they remember this light within and shift from dis-ease to well-being, balance, self-love, and peace. Yes. And we'll be speaking about the healing power of love with your higher self. And as we've been connecting, Melissa, we just found this common thread, which I totally love when we when we do this is that we used to live in the same town in California, and we used to go to the same event, the Women's Herbal Northern California Women's Herbal Symposium. And I'm sure there might be other people listening right now that have been there with us. And so I was just sharing with Melissa that I actually had a memory of her. And this was what, for me, probably like 12 years ago. And
Yeah.
now here we are sitting together. Um, so this is really beautiful. And you were talking about this experience that you had this morning with a question that came to you, and it's really powerful and potent. So I'd love for you to share this experience that you were having today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Again, I so appreciate you inviting me to be here. I'm so delighted to speak with you and be a part of this event. And to come to that question, I was in meditation this morning, and we're in this really huge shifting portal in our world. There's so much that's happening, that has been happening, and that is happening now, and my sense is that will continue to happen. And as light bearers, as light workers, I can imagine everyone who's listening who can identify in that way. We're all being asked to go within and ask the question: how can we actually help shift this world? And I can imagine that many of us have been asking this question for a long time. It's one of those questions that we have to come back to again and again and again. And for me, the mind can get involved. You know, of course, in inquiry, the mind can get involved and tell you things. Well, you should do this and you should do that. But ultimately, when I connect to my higher self, when I connect to the vast field, my higher self and the heart field, it inevitably comes back again and again and again and again. And it really comes back to the healing power of love. Because when we allow ourselves to really connect into that conduit, that divine conduit, the divine healing conduit that we are a part of, there is a love that is present within that conduit that has the ability to heal the deepest wounds, the deepest pains, the deepest struggles, that, you know, the animal body that feels frozen in the corner growling, so to speak. All those different parts of us that can actually be healed by this power of love. And as we have this ability to heal our own psyches, our own shadows, what is still traumatized inside of us, whether we're conscious of it or not, that as we have that ability to, when we get to a certain percentage of higher self stabilization in our life, where our ego is not running anymore, then we can literally be part of the cause. In other words, we are living at cause. We are living in alignment with this love. That doesn't mean that we have to do it perfectly, of course, but to actually be in such alignment with this love that it allows our higher self to be the one who's leading our life. And then when our higher self is the one that's leading our life, the majority of the time, or even a certain percentage, that could be 51% even, right? Or 50.5%, right? So when our higher self is leading, we're going to be led in certain ways to help people in the way that is the most alignment, that is going to help humanity evolve and shift, because there is so much darkness and so much shadow, and it's coming out now. We can't ignore that it's not here anymore. It's here. So it's really motivating us as healers and those who are in the process of healing, which I think I can very safely say most healers are also involved in the process of healing. That goes hand in hand, right? So everyone who is identifying in this way, we're all being asked to step forward and to take that next step of healing, so that we can be the light bearers that we are, the light ambassadors, so to speak.
Yes, thank you for sharing. So moving to, witness this, profound space that opened up with you. today. And then just also recognize that it's something that, as being someone who does this work, or any of you out, that are listening in, that are feeling that calling within too, just noticing that this is something that comes up, like you said, over and over and over again. It's like, and that the more we sit with it, it just anchors in deeper and deeper. And then we invite and open that space for our higher consciousness to lead more and more and more, and come into that place of stabilization that you were speaking about. And if you could speak about that more, of what it actually looks like to work in that space, or create that space of stabilization with the higher self leading.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I'm going to do is what I'd like to do is explain some of the overview of, first of all, how I got here and what is it exactly that I'm talking about. So I went through almost a decade-long dark night of the soul. And from that experience, I had many, what we'll call come to Jesus moments, so to speak. And actually, I'll be honest with you, before I went through that dark night of the soul, I considered myself a pagan and a Buddhist, and had background in Christianity. But what happened is that I was told in many, many, many different visions, many different experiences, that I'm of the Order of the Magdalene, and I'm here to connect to this higher vibration of Christ consciousness, cosmic Christ consciousness, which really means the crystalline consciousness inside of ourselves, inside of our heart. So through that experience, both Jesus, who I call Yeshua, as well as Mary Magdalene and other ascended masters, really helped me understand and have this experience of how we can utilize our higher self in order to bring healing into our experience. I also had physical teachers that led me in certain directions, but they were really the ones that came in and really, really helped guide me in this regard. So the work that I do in the world is called somatic awakening. At least that's what I'm teaching. That is what has been born through me. I do a lot of other things, but this is the primary thing that I'm doing now, teaching it and having a practitioner program, writing a book on it, etc. So in essence, what this work does is that it really helps you connect to what I call your higher self complex. And what that is these different aspects of our higher self. So it starts with our higher ego and our higher mind, and engaging our adult consciousness. Adult consciousness is a part of ourselves that can actually be in relationship to our, what I call our negative egoic voices, our parts. So in essence, it's, I'll give you a quick example. So say, for instance, a 4-year-old had a really traumatizing experience because his mother left, and then he made a story about that actually was very painful for him. So let's say, as an example, he made the story that he couldn't trust women, which worked pretty well until he was a young adult. And then he was in these relationships and they all fell through because he couldn't trust women. So in this regard, this is a negative egoic voice or construct. So adult consciousness can actually come in and be in relationship with this part so that it can not be running the show. So in essence, it differentiates. So this is phase 1. And in somatic awakening, it's called Gestalt somatic awakening, where we're really engaging this differentiation experience so that adult consciousness can come in and be in relationship to and stabilize this part. So then we go into phase 2, which is really, so to speak, the big movement, the entree, so to speak, of the modality in spiritual practice, which is called somatic awakening, the practice. And here what we're actually doing is we're engaging our higher self, and we're engaging an aspect of our higher self, which you could also use the word spirit interchangeably. Higher self and spirit, same thing in regard to how I'm defining it here. So when we engage the higher self, what we're doing is that we're connecting to a part of our higher self called higher self witness consciousness. And then we bring that witness consciousness down into our body and ask the wisdom of our somatic body to take us to the place that most needs our attention at that moment. So I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was working with a woman who's having right SI joint problems. And so the last time we worked, she went into that area and realized that there was a spear stuck in her from past traumas. And so the higher self witness consciousness came in and started working with it in a very loving, very not forcing, not trying. But what happens is that as this part starts to realize that the higher self is really showing up for it, what happens is it begins to trust. And as it trusts, then there can be this huge amount of light, whatever is needed, whether it's love or compassion or more presence or incredible healing, whatever is needed. And as this part trusts, then how I like to put it is that the conduit of divinity is actually opened up. Our conduit of divinity that is even above our higher self, that connects all the way to our own relationship, our own connection to the divine. And this huge amount of love pours in. Then what will happen is that inevitably this part will shift, whether it relaxes or it goes to sleep. Sometimes it dissolves, and then things shift. So for this woman that I was talking about yesterday, so she had this spear in her the time before last. The spear had almost completely dissolved. There was a little piece left. We went in to work with that piece. And what happened is that she went into this awakening field of realizing that she now has permission to have joy in her life. And it came directly from this somatic experience, the somatic awakening in her right SI joint, because her spirit was in relationship to that pain. And it felt safe enough to now actually blossom into this higher vibration of who she is. So when I say utilizing our higher self, it literally is utilizing our higher self directly in direct engagement in relationship in our body. And there, I'll just say this one other piece about somatic awakening. There's the third phase called quantum somatic awakening, which utilizes all these higher vibrational techniques in terms of using the power of the word, using the power of our future self, using the power of our heart, body, and coherence, all these different ways in order to really help stabilize the practice of our higher self being in direct engagement with that part that most needs love and healing. And the witness consciousness, because it is connected to our higher self, it has that ability where it opens directly up into our higher self, and it has everything that we need. It's so amazing. And I've seen it and experienced it now thousands of times. And this is why I'm so impassioned to actually get this work out in the world, because it has the ability to change the world. And I'm so excited and delighted to be the one sharing this. So I could go on and on and on, but I'll stop here. You can ask more questions or give me your insight. Would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah. Well, as I was, listening to the phases, it really showed me kind of how I also work with the phases of awakening, and knowing that trust is such a huge piece for people to shift a lot of these dynamics that we're holding in our bodies, that we're holding in our minds, our energy bodies, wherever these, past life or current life traumas or ideas are held, or even just the old distorted programs are held. And so coming into that place of trust, it seems like the biggest question. And it's like, really, it's like that practice of connecting in and inviting in, the higher self, inviting in that place of neutrality and witnessing and observing, right? So we're detached a little bit. We're just kind of like opening up that space. And so that's such a beautiful expression that you're offering people to come into that space of trust that's also body oriented, and so thank you for that work you're doing in the world. It's so amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes. So, it was interesting because you said something earlier when you were having that experience this morning that kind of came in as you were saying this as well. When we are looking at others and how we align to others to help shift this planet, right? And within this of healing that you're doing, how do you feel that translates, when people are opening up into this space of trust and this healing happens within themselves? How do you feel it translates into how they relate to others then?
That's a really good question. So I think first what I want to do is just talk a little bit about trust and
Hmm.
then connect that to others.
Yes.
I was just teaching about this a few days ago. And what happens with trust is that, as we all know, trust doesn't happen overnight, especially if we have parts inside of us that don't trust because of their past experiences. So maybe there's a traumatized 5-year-old or traumatized 10-year-old inside of us because our parents got a divorce or our grandmother died or whatever happened, right? So when we work with these parts, and not only working with the parts, but when we work with the divine, when we work with our higher self, when we work with ascended masters, when we do our work, period, we're being asked to move through the process to get to trust. And so the way that I like to put it is that process starts with hope, where we are saying yes to the light. And we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but we're kind of jumping in or putting our toes in, so to speak, and saying, well, I hope everything is going to work out. I hope that working with this healer, I'm going to get something, or I hope that, doing this meditation retreat, something's going to happen for me. And then we go into the level of faith. And with faith, what happens is that we've had some experiences, we've had some synchronistic unfolding, or we've had some big healing experiences, or maybe we had from big meditation or from a healing experience that we are in this awakened joy for a 24-hour state or a 5-hour state or even 5-minute state, right? So the more that we have those experiences, the more faith that we can have. And then we open to trust. And when we open to trust, what happens is that we then can lean back into our experiences. We can lean back into that awakened experience that we had that's now been imprinted upon us, or we can lean back into that incredible synchronistic thing that happened that allowed our life to flow with ease that our mind could never have figured it out, right? So we can lean back into that and we can trust. And there's a lot of people right now that are having big unfoldings in their life. Their life is being torn apart and brought back together and all these different things. And I'm talking to these people every day. A lot of them are my patients. And those that have an inkling of faith and trust from their own experience, it's easier for them to relax back and go, oh, right, I've experienced this before. Right, I know how this works. So taking that to our own experience of when we trust our higher self, when we trust our adult consciousness, when we trust that we have a witness consciousness present, when we trust that we're not going to be swept away by our own negative egoic stories, then we have the ability to show up with others in a way that we're more balanced. So that could be our partner. One of the things about romantic relationships is that hands down, they trigger us the most because we trust them the most and they know our stuff and they can reflect it back to us in this exquisite way. And this can be very, very painful. So when we have this ability to trust ourselves, even if we get triggered, we are able to show up. Maybe not that moment. Maybe we need to, take a time out, but ultimately we are able to show up with them in a way that we can use language that's not so triggering to them because we're balanced. We can use I statements. We can use, statements of, I felt this whenever you said that. And, this is my story around that as compared to you did this and you did that and da 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 da. So I start with a romantic relationship because that can be the most intense. But then once we know how to do that, we can then bring that into our life, into our family, into our friendship, into our community, and ultimately into our world, especially if we're called to stand up and be leaders, right? Especially there's so many people that are being called now to take that next step into their evolution, into their soul purpose, whether that be taking a step into being a healer or whether that be from being a healer into being bigger with your energy because you're needed now. And so the more that we stabilize ourselves, the bigger that we can get. I know for myself, I'll just share just a brief story. In my experience, for better or for worse, I have had the experience of being able to remember a lot of past lives. And most of the time, whenever people hear that, they're like, oh, that's so cool and that's so great that you did that. But for me, most of the past lives were very traumatizing. Not easy past lives, lots of being burned at the stake and torture and other things. So it's been really, really difficult to work with that. And somatic awakening was really the answer to the call because I was dumbfounded. I had tried many different modalities and many different things to actually feel different in my body, and somatic awakening is what answered the call. But the reason why I say that is because I'm being called to be the spokesperson for a modality that needs to be shared in the world. And I'm saying that very specifically that way because it's not about me. It's about like literally being a conduit for this light. And in order for me to be a conduit for this light, I've had to heal multiple levels of fear of actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can imagine that if you're a leader, you know what I'm talking about, right? We're always being asked to take that next step to really be even bigger in our space, not from spiritual ego, but actually like, okay, let's now do this work so that you can even be more humble and be more of a channel of the light. And so that's really the process of taking it from self to the bigger scope of humanity and what we're being asked to do. Thank you for the
Yeah.
question. I've never been asked that before.
You're welcome. Well, it seems like it's so on the front page right now with so many people. It's like trusting what's happening in the world, trusting what's happening in their lives, trusting what's happening is going to turn out into something that's going to be, I'll use quotes good because, we're shifting out of polarity, but something that where we can all come together and have a more beneficial reality, right? And so this process that you're speaking about, and as I speak about it myself in a different way of what trust is, it's like coming into that beneficial relationship with ourselves, first, and then being able to have that, like you illustrated so nicely, and how that then translates into how we relate to others in the world. And one of the practices I like to use with people is just, to even open that frequency of connection to our higher self, is aligning with our higher self, just making that intention to align with our higher self every day, with our soul, with our purpose, in a morning meditation. And then also saying, I align with the higher self or the soul purpose of all that I come into contact with. So then we kind of remind ourselves to, I want to operate on that level of communication and experience with others, right? So that we can create that field. And, and then that can start to build trust in ourselves to like be in that space over time. But the other piece of trust that I wanted to ask you about, that I feel a lot of people are coming to me with too, is like, say, as you're on your path, you're hearing your guidance, you're having your experiences, maybe with ascended masters or maybe just with your intuition, and you act on guidance, right? And maybe what appears to be like a total fallout, like everything just fell apart, nothing worked. So I can't trust my intuition. I can't trust my higher self. I can't trust these guides anymore. And sometimes I'm like, well, maybe that was what needed to happen. But can you talk about that for maybe your own experience, or, how you work with others in that as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so interesting because the first thing that came to me was a telesummit, or kind of a very similar experience that you're putting on here, that was connected to Mary Magdalene. And I had this, vision experience where Divine Mother and Mary Magdalene came to me and they said, oh, this is in perfect alignment and this is the timing. And it was like, dun, da, da, da. And I said, okay, great, great. And there was an alignment with a friend of mine who was also a teacher and priestess sister. of both of us co-leading this event, and we started connecting and gathering and creating a schedule and connecting with other teachers and all these different things. And there was a big movement that was happening at that time that one of the primary authors of the works of Mary Magdalene, she was doing this big movement, and we were going to align it with what she was doing. And we can never really connect with her, even though we had inroads and there was lots of different things that were going on. So we just kept on trying and trying and trying and trying, and nothing was panning out. And so after about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months of this, we were like, well, let's just let it go. Let's just let it go. And when I looked back upon that experience, actually what happened is that my friendship with this person deepened exponentially. And she is a very significant person to me in this lifetime and in past lifetimes. We're very similar in terms of what we're teaching, even though we're different enough that we work well together. And also I had connections with a lot of other people that became very important to me later on, right? So even though it didn't unfold in the right and perfect timing, in terms of actually a manifestation of the summit that we were thinking about, it actually served in me making some very important connections and relationships that really served me later on. So, these kind of things happen all the time. And I think the thing that I just want to say, because I've experienced them and I've heard so many stories from my patients and students around this as well, that when you look back hindsight and go, oh, but that's really what was going on. Because the bottom line is that our ego is really quick to tell us, oh, that was a failure. Well, that was a waste of time. That didn't work. You wasted a bunch of money there, all these different things. But from our higher self perspective, it's a totally different thing. It's a totally, totally different thing. And I'm getting another really strong hit from my higher self to share this. This is an even more significant story, but I'm going to shorten it because I don't want to go on and on and on because it's kind of a long story. So in 2008, I had been a director of a program at New College of California. I was married. My child at that time was about 4 years old, and I was writing a book on spiritual activism. That year, the college closed. We got a divorce. I went through bankruptcy. I didn't have the time and energy to finish writing the book. I had to start my practice very, very, very quickly. And literally so much of that year, I was on my knees going, why? Why did you do this? Why? I was in the middle of writing this book. I was in the middle of teaching all these incredible students, all this beautiful wisdom. Why? And I realized that I literally had to go through the caterpillar phase of literally being in goo for a few years in order to come out to the other end and actually be able to receive the teaching that I've received, so I can actually teach what I came here to teach, because apparently that's not what I was supposed to be teaching. I learned a lot from it, but it really totally shifted my life. Yeah.
And yeah, wow, thank you for sharing your stories. And then so in that, it's like it seems to me like it built more of a foundation for your trust over time because of the developments that took place afterwards and what you actually shifted into from those experiences. And so I would just offer, you who are listening in, to take this and allow this to maybe shift your mindset with the experiences you have had that you feel you dove into that you thought were going to be this wonderful experience. It didn't turn out the way you thought. And shifting, as Melissa's been nicely speaking to, is shifting from that mindset also from ego to the higher self, bigger perspective of what takes place in our life experiences. So yeah, nice. Wow. And I have to say, this is another point of connection. I attended New College when I was in California.
Gosh, I had no idea.
I had no idea either, because I think you might have come on after, but I did some of the North Campus and some of the San Francisco campus. So
I
yeah.
I taught in the North Bay. That was
Yeah.
where my headquarters were.
Yeah. So
That's
that's great.
amazing.
I love our synchronicities here.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. So, what really interests me is that you have this really amazing connection with higher self and with these masters that you work with to bring in this amazing power of higher consciousness and the crystalline, connection that we have with consciousness. It's, crystalline body, the crystalline grid system, and all of that you work with. And you're a naturopathic doctor that gets to work with the field of the body and how to naturally, work with health. And so what happens with, patients that come in that you get to work with, and what you're seeing now with what's taking place on the planet? That really fascinates me, and maybe others will have other things going on in their lives that this may
Mhm.
speak to, with, physical issues popping up while we're going through this shift.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, actually, what's coming through my mind right now is that a patient many years ago wrote a testimonial about me, and she said, "She's your one-stop shop," because I do so many different things.
Yeah.
Still a licensed naturopathic doctor. I probably will eventually let that licensing go whenever I teach more, but at this point I still have a license, so that means I do, labs and blood work and all these different things. I have a very strong uh, mind in terms of physiology. I used to teach physiology and anatomy and different things, so I understand how it all works together. And at the same time, I'm putting everything through the intuitive lens. So in other words, the naturopathic doctor might have all these protocols or these different ideas or things to rule out and all these different things. But each session that I work with a person, about 90% of the time, I'm looking at everything intuitively. So not only does that affirm or, you know, not affirm certain ways of treating the body, whether that be a nutritional protocol, supplements, diet, homeopathy, all of those different things, but also really looking at the core causations. And so the core causation could be physical, but most of the time what I see is that it's a combination of many different things. Like, yes, we do need to do the physical over here. Like, say, for instance, a person's coming to me with type 2 diabetes. Yes, you need to be on this diet, you need to take these supplements, you need to do these things over here. And we also really need to address your stress, and we need to address your relationship with your mother, which is still influencing your life and how you actually perceive yourself and how you see yourself as less than, which then actually connects to how you're not actually making enough money, which is increasing your stress, as an example, right? So there's many different ways that I'm working with people. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing, in essence, at first we're stabilizing with the naturopathic protocols, and then also working on the mind body level. Also, transmissions can happen for people. Ascended masters come in all the time to give people different perspectives or transmissions of energy or help open up their field, as well as, we can do other types of work. Sometimes it's past life work. Sometimes it's, connected to, strictly working with the energetics of the body in relationship to the somatics, in relationship to the higher self. So I got a big tool bag, so to speak, and I use my intuition to really get a sense of what's needed at any given time.
Yeah, nice. And so what are you feeling? Are you seeing a shift in what's happening with people coming to you as, more people are awakening and more people are coming into this field? And is there a trend?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think first off, because I am evolving, and this is true for all healers, as you evolve, your clientele will shift to match your resonance, right? So,
Right.
20
Mhm.
years ago, I would work with people that had no idea what a chakra was or what energy body was, or that their physical body could be connected to their emotions. And so now I'm really manifesting in terms of who I'm attracting, people who are ready to actually do the work for not only their deeper healing, physical healing, emotional healing, energetic healing, but also to awaken. And so in this process, what I find is that I'm gathering more people to me, like on energetic, what I'll call the energetic marketing level. I'm gathering more people to me who are going through the swings of the awakening process. So in other words, as we connect more and more to the light, let me back up a little bit. As we heal more and more, we connect more and more to our higher self. As we connect to the light of our higher self, what happens is that more light actually moves into our body. So this is what I call the beauty and the integration of awakening. The beauty meaning we're opening to these vast knowing, this understanding of love, who we truly are, what we're really here to do, all of these different things in this field of awakening. And then that light goes into the body and it goes into the darkness. And that can be painful in that integration. And so a lot of my work is to align with ease and grace and right and perfect timing. Because myself personally, I've been in the throes of multiple levels of awakening. And I also have been in the throes of the school of hard knocks of that integration of that awakening. And that's actually, I'll be honest with you, it was so intense for me. That's when I started calling out to the Ascended Masters to come. I'm like, I need some help. Whoever can help me. Kuan Yin would show up. Thank you. Or I need some help. Okay, Mother Mary would show up. Okay, thank you. And this is one of the things that I learned. Like, we, as a free will being, we get to claim ease and grace and right and perfect timing in our healing and awakening. And because otherwise it can be painful. And so this is what I'm seeing a lot with people that have worked with me enough so that their physical symptoms are getting more and more stabilized, and then they're going through these swings. I work with them, some people I work with every week, some people I work with every other week, some people once a month. And most of the people that I'm working with now are swinging into this, oh my God, I had this great awakening. Okay, now it's actually coming into my physical body. I'm having pain. Okay, I have to work through this. Okay, now there's more space here. Okay, now I'm integrated. Now I can actually bring in my higher self at this level.
Yeah, isn't it true, the journey that we take, because I noticed this idea of like, oh, I'm gonna have an awakening and everything's gonna be, a
That's what I
whole
thought
different life.
too.
So did I, it's like the naivety that we have of wanting something to be, so shiny and beautiful all the time.
Exactly.
And just noticing the cycles and, being willing to work within the cycles that take place as we grow and as we shift. And as you said, the more we heal, the more, it's kind of interesting, the more the light comes in, but the more that inner light is able to shine too,
That's
because
exactly it. That's exactly it. Because as we integrate and bring in our higher self, it automatically awakens our natural and inherent divine that lives inside of us, that lives inside of our heart, right? And the ego, even though it's trying to help us by trying to help us survive, and all these protective voices, those voices can be so negatively oriented and shut down that inherent knowing of our divine beingness. So yeah.
yes, it can. It sure does. It's almost like that's its job.
Exactly. And
And we have
so
to
in so
go
many
ahead.
ways, having that light come in, I mean, it's literally like the troops showing up, dun, da, 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 here we are to help heal the ego, and the ego's like, until it starts to trust that the light actually has its highest good. And one of the things I like to say is that this is not about killing the ego. This is about lovingly caring for the ego so that it can rest. And usually whenever it realizes that it can rest and it no longer has to perform this, job that's been anxious or whatever that is, it usually will go to sleep. And then when the majority of our ego is asleep, then our life is so much easier. and we're
Yeah.
and we're more in an awakened state on an ongoing level.
Yes, yes. It's interesting to be where I am now and look back at years ago when, so many different levels of the ego were at play. And now, yes, they still may come into, my mind or whatever, but then it's like, oh, okay. Glad to show up. Have a nice day, and it's
Exactly.
so much easier to shift. And
Yeah.
just to illustrate the power of the consistency of being and practicing and coming into that state, and allowing that trust to open up, and doing the healing of what we can become, what we can become. And actually it's interesting to me, because I feel like our language is so limited sometimes with how to actually express what's taking place, because it's like we already are it, so we're having to become who we are, and it's just sometimes it's confusing for people what that actually
Yeah.
looks like and means. um, so for you, in this experience of bringing through this somatic awakening, what is the experience you're having with the crystalline field of this idea of becoming? Yeah.
Hmm. That is an ever moving answer. I
Yes, it
think
is,
I think
isn't
the first
it?
thing, yeah, the first thing is that it's important for us to realize that when we get somewhere, that's it's going to change. Change is
Yeah.
always happening. And I remember years ago, whenever I, was studying with these very, very, very highly awakened masters, and this was one of the biggest teachings that they shared again and again and again, is that awakening doesn't end, it's always unfolding. One of my favorite teachers has been and still is, even though I don't study with him so much anymore, Adyashanti. And every time I would sit with Adyashanti, you could tell, oh, he's in a new place, he's navigated some new terrain, he's now not only talking about something different, but he's actually vibrating in a different level. So for me, what I'm finding is that that process that I was just talking about the awakening process and the coming into the process, it's continuing. And now, my process of healing my past lives, it's still continuing. Now I'm like it, you know, further on back, like 10,000, 15,000 years ago, and working with deep programs that I'm having then, that
Yeah.
actually have influenced every single one of my lives. And now I'm working with that so that I can clear that, so I can hold this bigger space. But I think, just to answer your question specifically, what I'm finding more and more is that I have more ability to connect into the divine essence of my heart, to connect into the divine essence of my higher mind, to connect into the divine essence of grace that flows into my life. And it's still, it's still this movement back and forth. It doesn't stop, right?
Yeah.
But the balance, the places of balance in the middle become more significant. The time of that becomes more significant, and how I'm showing up on my relationships, just like you said, is completely different than 20 years ago or even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just a totally different container. I can come back so much quicker, or I can bring in this sense of divine love, unconditional love, so much quicker than what used to be. The awakening
Yeah.
is still happening. Again, I don't think it ever ends. My ego is still, I think I've done, I'm past 51%. I'm somewhere over here, but my ego is still, it still has its days sometimes.
Yes, it does. Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've been really noticing, because I also work with, what we call ascended masters, and I was really being held in this field the other day, and it's something I've been shown, over the past years, but I was really, really saw it and felt it, was that this shift that we're going through right now is new for every being on every level, in every dimension, everywhere. And
Mhm.
the idea of ascending is just that inner process of that willingness to expand and to become more conscious and to heal, and that these other beings are also reaching new levels of awareness and consciousness and shifting with this awakening. It's like it's a mass awakening on all these levels. So we're being guided by these higher conscious
Absolutely.
beings that are also attaining higher consciousness. So there's no
Absolutely.
end game.
Yeah, there's no end game. Yeah, the same thing is happening with Gaia. You know, she's ascending
Yes.
as well. Actually, I have a dear friend who did a transmission a few weeks ago, and she's like, Gaia is now in 4D, and if we're not on board with actually ascending, then it's going to be a very painful experience, right? And so we're all ascending, we're all moving. And you're exactly right. You know, I just taught a class in the fall called the Quantum U, and it was talking about, well, how do we get to 3D to 5D, right? Well, you can't jump over 4D, number one. And in 4D, you learn a lot of the lessons of adult consciousness, witness consciousness, how to be in a different relationship to time, how to be in a different relationship to all these different parts of you, so that you can then be in higher and higher vibration the majority of the time. And it's a process. It doesn't happen. It definitely doesn't happen through our mind saying, oh, I'm going to do this ascension path, because literally, like, what I've experienced is that yes, we can connect to our higher mind, but we really have to get out of the limited space time construct of 3D, which our lower mind is in. So all the work that needs to be done in order for us to resonate at this higher vibration the majority of the time, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a big field to hold. It's a big space to hold. And, just doing, I can tell that with the work you do and like with the work I do, it's like, wow, it's, in the beginning, it feels like it takes a lot of body energy, right? And the more, like you say, we bring the light is able to come through and we're embodying more light vibration and frequency, then, we step up into those higher vibrations. But it's interesting how we can oscillate just like we do with the ego. We're oscillating from dimension to dimension and field to
Yes,
field, and just being
absolutely.
okay with those days, like you said, where the ego's at play or we're not being able to hold the bigger field. And so I really wanted to bring in that topic of, I felt like you started to speak about it a little bit earlier when you're saying, just being open to the divine, is that surrender to our
Absolutely.
experience
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
moment. So,
Absolutely. One of the things that has really helped me do that is really connecting to compassion for myself. Because the more we connect to compassion, the more we can give it to others. The more we're vessels for that compassion for ourselves, the more we can give it to others. And it's true, some days we are in this high vibrational field of love and unification and understanding from this divine perspective, unification with divine and humanity, all these different things. And then, give it a few weeks or a week, 2 weeks, boom, back here. And of course, there's that integration process, but then there's the daily, as you're integrating, some days I'm in this divine love and everyone that I work with, this is this flow. And then other days, especially whenever I'm working these deeper pieces, I'll just say this right now. What I'm experiencing, not in this moment, but in this general level, is one of those things where whenever something's been in your subconscious or unconscious, and you've always known about it, but then it comes on board, and you're like, oh, wow, now I know you, right?
yes, exactly. Ooh.
So to have compassion for that, because the beauty
Yeah.
of it is that now, here's the difference from where I was 20 years ago, is that now I can see it and go, oh, a part of me says, oh, I'm glad that I can see you now, because now I can heal you. Because
Mm-hmm.
before you were unconscious, but now I can heal you.
Yeah.
My
And
higher self, the team of ascended masters, we got it. I have the trust because I have all the experience. Okay, let's do it. This is
yeah.
painful, but I got it, because now we can heal this.
Yeah, and that's part of the unification process, right? It's like creating that whole field instead of having these blips or holes or fractures in our field from these, past
Exactly.
experiences. As you said, it's like, wow, isn't it powerful to go to that causal experience, even if it is, in our time frame, 10,000 years ago or 10,000 lifetimes ago on another planet in another galaxy or universe.
Exactly.
And we get to
Exactly.
track this amazing journey of this soul that, you know, we're expressing through in this body at this time of, and so what I with someone today that I was working with is, let's look at these like little pieces in life that we're navigating that seem big to us as an exploration. We're just traveling, we're just moving. It's a moving field of exploration that you always have the freedom to choose within. You're never
Absolutely.
locked into anything, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's like if we look at that bigger picture of all the fields that we've traversed in all our lifetimes, it's like, let's open up to that, you know, powerful
Right.
adventure.
Exactly. Exactly. Because when we do that, we can see number one, well, we're not just contained in this one little lifetime. And
Yes.
number two, like realize that all that we have experienced is from this divine perspective. So in other words, like the part of us that's divine, we can call it the oversoul, or there's many other names to define that, but to actually come from that perspective and go, oh, this is just an experience of the divine experiencing itself,
Yes. Yes.
right? Whenever we can open up to that bigger perspective. Absolutely.
Oh, yes. I love that. You know, just like creating that in our daily life as a practice so that we can move more easily as you know, explorers in this reality. And you know, you mentioned in the beginning that you're working within like that crystalline Christos, you know, consciousness. Would you be willing to share, you know, what you receive that is? Because I think a lot of people are like delving into that now and they don't
Yes.
quite understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really beautiful because I was just connecting into that hours ago in my meditation. So I'm just going to close my eyes because the energy is still really here, and I just want to be able to um, just give it a voice. So the first thing I just want to say is that the crystalline field is a field of divine remembrance. So, in essence, it helps us remember who we truly are. And if you actually look at Jesus's teachings at the very deepest levels, that's what he was really teaching, that we are divine beings. So it has an inherent, impregnated in it is this divine resonance of helping us to remember who we are. The other thing that is inherent in it is this incredible sense of love, like a love that our language can't even define. There's no words for that level of love, right? We can call it ahimsa, right? And kind of comes
Yes.
close to it, but it's this love that I'm just going to try to define it a little bit. It's a love that is never ending. It is always wanting our highest good. It's always wanting our healing. It has this deepest level of forgiveness. No matter what has been done, it always has the ability to welcome you back with open arms in this love. It also has this deep sense of forgiveness. Kind of take that a little bit deeper, this deep sense of all is okay. Everything that you've done, you've been experiencing in this pool of polarity, dark and light and dark and light. But from this divine cosmic Christos perspective, there is no duality and it's all accepted. It's all forgiven. And it's hard for our human mind or even our human heart to totally understand that. Like, what about Hitler? Or what about da da and da da da? You know, I think there's a whole other thing that we can get into in terms of how that works with the universe and, like, law of cause and effect, that plays a role too. But in terms of forgiveness, we don't really need to ask the divine for forgiveness because the divine is automatically forgiving. Who we really need to ask forgiveness for is ourself and anyone that we've hurt, right? Because this energy it inherently is forgiving. And I think there's more I could say, but those are the biggest pieces I would say about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's powerful energy. It's powerful to step into that space where, you know, that is that unity field that is always flowing, the energy that supports us no matter
Absolutely.
what, no matter what.
That's it. That's it. It's this unified field that supports us, and it's a unified field around the world. It's a unified field around each individual who calls it in. It can be a unified field between this lifetime and past lifetimes. It can be a unified field of protection and safety, but it really is unifies us as well because
Yeah,
we
it's that
are
thread.
connected.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thread that runs through all of us. It's that source energy, right? There's nothing,
Exactly.
and it's like you said earlier, you know, we're just a piece of creation that's expressing itself in the world. And so it's fascinating to me the division that we've created through this planet and that exists on, other planets for the reasons that it does, that we're shifting into now, recognizing that, wow, you are me and I am you, and I'm just expressing myself differently, and wow, let's celebrate it, let's have fun, let's explore it. Let's, and
Exactly.
that piece of that unified field, I feel like that's what we're doing. We're bringing all of this consciousness,
Mhm.
the capacity, we're building that capacity through this awakening to have more and more consciousness, so that we can sit in the field of the diversity that exists within this planet, within outside this planet, as recognition of that connection and unification, and harmonizing with all these parts of ourselves, so we can, you know, uh, have this experience of more unity. And the piece that came in earlier for me that I want to share from what you're saying from this, where, if the first piece is being in collaboration with ourselves, right? We're going through this awakening that's leading us into collaborating with others, more in that collective experience. It's like we first have to collaborate with ourselves,
Mhm.
you know, and then we can collaborate with the fields that we're playing in all the time. And so, with this, when you're working with people, I'm really curious of what it's like for you to, hold this field and see what happens when people are shifting from more of that uh, kind of separation experience of themselves into the unified experience of what it's like when they're like, wow, I really feel that. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I think the first thing I just want to say is that when a person shifts from this, say that, for instance, we're doing somatic awakening work and there's some big contraction and there's, maybe the emotional release, or there's grief or pain or suffering, whatever it is. And when this part actually realizes that his or her higher self is actually here, like literally here, when they realize, oh, I'm just not visualizing, this is not just some meditation that I'm just visualizing this thing, but no,
yeah,
actually my higher self is really actually here and showing up, and I'm feeling it, and there's a huge amount of love that's pouring forth, and they start crying out of like, oh my god, I'm not alone anymore, or whatever that is.
yeah,
It's like, I can't even describe what happens for me. It's like
mm,
I feel this deep fulfillment. It's such a deep
yeah,
fulfillment because I know that I'm doing what I came here to do. I know that I'm serving my role and purpose as a divine gardener, so to speak, as a divine conduit, as helping them connect to their higher self. And it's just beautiful and profound, and
mhm,
it's so big. This is why I'm actually doing a practitioner program, because now I have these students that I've been working with for a while, and I just want to tell this story just for a moment because it's such a like a whoa, a why eye opener for me. So I thought that I was going to be doing a practitioner program next year. I mean, we're in COVID, for goodness sake, right? Where I'm like, this is not a good time to do this. And I had these group of students come to me, and they had their own metamorphosis process. And they're like, we're ready. I want to learn how to do what I've experienced for the last few years. It's so important and significant for me. I want to learn how to do it. So I just started my first practitioner program because students came to me and said, we're ready. I was like,
Yes.
great. I don't have to
Yay.
market. This is great. This is wonderful. This is, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Yes.
This is, yes, we're doing this. So to
Yes.
answer your question is that in that place, and the reason why I even said that is because all of these students have experiences again and again and again and again of this, like, oh my gosh, something is here that I didn't even know existed, and it's actually bringing this healing into this place. And both the client, patient, and myself, we're like lifted into this divine grace. And that's really what it's, that's really what happens. And I'm just so grateful for that
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
of
The divine.
unification and relationship that happens in this shift and this beauty and this healing. Yeah.
Mm. I feel this. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
so
just for my
welcome.
own practice, it is powerful, isn't it, to be in that place when you really feel that depth shift happen and that line of unification
Exactly.
between who and you're working with. It's just like, oh, you're both receiving and being in it at the same time. So,
Exactly.
thank you. Thank you,
Exactly.
Melissa. You have so much to share, and really enjoyed our conversation
Likewise.
today.
Very much. Me too.
And just what you were speaking about, actually, uh, is like close to the title of your free gift that you're sharing with everyone. Can you please share that?
Yes, yes, definitely. So I would like to offer everyone who's listening who would like to find out more a free ebook. I think it's about 60 some odd pages. And the title of the book is The Four Golden Keys to Healing: How to Utilize Your Higher Self to Heal Your Deepest Wounds with Somatic Awakening. And in this book, it gives you the foundations of the work. Since I wrote it, it's evolved even more. So I need to go back and edit it, but you definitely will get the solid foundations of this work, as well as you'll get information, links to meditations where not only you can read the book, but you can also do free meditations so that you can try it out for yourself. And then if you want to go further, there's many different ways that you can go further with it.
Mm.
It's absolutely free for you. Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading that ebook. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, yes. And to get that beautiful ebook, the link for the free gift is below. Please click on that link and expand in Melissa's world with her wisdom and power of healing. And also for the projects to inspire aspect of the event, please share with us your experience with projects that you have been involved with or support and what that means for you.
So, I remember whenever you first asked me about this, and I've been thinking about it. And for me, I've been an activist for a very, very long time. I started this work in my 20s with Greenpeace. And then, of course, I worked at New College, which is an activist college. And for me, what I find is that I allow my activism to be led by my heart, by my passion, by what's happening in the world. And so, yes, there are organizations that I've, given money to over time. And what I'm finding more and more these days is that I'm really listening to what's happening in the world. Like right now, I'm giving a lot of money to Black Lives Matter and other organizations connected to that. I've given a lot of, support and money around climate change and environmental issues, as well as refugees and other things. So, for me, I'm literally like keeping track of what's happening in the world and who needs my money the most at any given time. And so that's really how I'm supporting these organizations. I will say that one of the things that has come to light for me, especially with Black Lives Matter and looking at my own relationship with internalized subconscious racism. I was raised in the South. I'm like, okay, all hands on deck. we have to look at all parts, right? And what can I do? How can I be of service? And yes, I'm marching in the streets, I'm giving money, and the next time around for the practitioner program, there's going to be 2 scholarships, one a general scholarship and one a scholarship for people of color. And I will for sure give you lots of links, Kristen, to different organizations that I think are incredibly worthy and really could use our support.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really deeply appreciate your activism led from your heart.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, because I went through a similar thing, you know, of course, being an activist, you know, and I went to New College, of course, you know, it's like I shifted into that too. Activism became a healing thing for me rather than being out in the streets and doing this. It shifted into a different dynamic. And so I really resonate with that. And I'm sure others, viewers here, resonate with that too, of being led by the heart into what you want to share and support in the world to really create the change for our planet to be a better place. So
Absolutely.
thank you again, Melissa. And again, everyone, to enter into Melissa's world, please click that free link below for her free gift. And so much love to you, Melissa. And
thank you.
may your practitioner, you're welcome. And may your practitioner school, your course expand and grow and share more of this healing and wisdom in our world. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having this this experience and connecting all of us. And my sense of it is that this is both significant for every person that you're interviewing, but it's going to move out into the world in this beautiful, beautiful way. So thank you for spearheading it. Really see you and appreciate you. Yeah.
Received and reflected, and to everyone here too, to Melissa and to everyone here, reflecting this beauty that we're all sharing in right now. So everyone, please go forth in your day with love, peace, harmony, and balance in your hearts, minds, and souls, and we'll be with you again next time. Peace.